All right. Wow. This is like the smallest audience I've ever spoken in front of. Seriously? I appreciate you being here. Half of you I asked to be here. Some of you know who I am by marquee. Thanks, Doug. So this is going to make it real easy for me. Brad, were you supposed to say like some wonderful things about me before I gave up here? You're welcome to. I couldn't remember what they were. Did you get to see Brad this morning when we introduced our keynote speaker? Yeah. Gary did a good job. That was new for him. It's a lot of fun. So anyway. By the way, we can be like in class and you can all move up to the front of the seats so you can hear him, but you won't. You'll sit in the back, including you, Jeff Smith, back there at Planar. So Don Mastro, Vice President of Sales, AVI Systems. A little background on me. Over 30, and I don't want to give you the exact number because then things become more real. Over 35 years in the industry, in this industry, what you see on the floor today and what's evolved over the period of time that I've seen from analog to digital has been incredible. What's really happened in the last 5 years, and I'm going to talk quite a bit on that about managed services, which is all about day 2 support. I'm from the area. For those of you that don't know that, I grew up on the east side of St. Paul and went to Hamline University, so I am a Twin Cities person. Is that politically correct, I think? Person, yeah. Twin Cities person. And again, I appreciate all of you attending today, and I'm going to keep it pretty open and collaborative, so at the end, please have questions. This is really a changing part of our industry's managed services. So what is it? So we like to talk about managed services as something, and people say, what is managed services? I don't get it. Well, it's in the IT space. And we'll talk about what information technology does today in IT and normal, what computers and routers and switches and all the IT folks are doing in the CIO stack. Key industry trends that we're seeing, trends that are evolving in services are what we call our day 2 support. And then it is all about the end user. So when we walk into meetings and we listen to customers, this is just another evolution of what we're doing in systems integration and value-added support. And then why? Customers will say, well, I can do it myself, but there's a trend, and I've talked to someone on the floor today saying, we want to get out of this and we want somebody else to handle this for us in our collaboration spaces, our meeting spaces, or even our production facilities, that they want to outsource television production capabilities or augment. And we always say, listen, we're not trying to threaten any organization, we're trying to be augmentative to what you already have. And then finally what we do at AVI Managed Services and the 5 pillars that I'll talk about today of managed services. So it all starts with our proven process. And I want to bring this back to the ground zero because I can talk about managed services all day long, but let's talk about why. And there's really 4 steps to what we do that we feel are really important. Pro development is backing up the customer to the very beginning and finding out what the purpose of anything we're talking about in an event. Whether it's a financial event, a problem that a customer has, or any one of your constituents that you work with within your organizations, or whether it's just a pain point you're feeling, we want to understand that right from the beginning. So when we have a pro development discussion, that pro development discussion or identifying the problem or solution, we're already having what we call managed services, or in our brand called pro support. We're having that conversation in the very beginning. And then defining the details is the designing of whatever we're doing, whether it be in a systems integration project, whether it be in unified collaboration or conferencing, or digital media and signage or broadcast, or large venue. All of that is happening in design development. We apply the same approach as it comes to a managed services platform. And then finally, we build something. And we could say the same thing about managed services. We're going to build a managed services team. We're going to build a managed services process. We're going to put together either a hybrid or a sole solution that makes sense for you. And then finally, pro support, what we call peace of mind delivered. That's what I'm focusing on today in managed services. So I look at this whole proven process circle as 4 things. Pro development is this is your dream. Pro design is this is your dream put on paper. Pro integration is this is your dream brought to life. And pro support is this is your dream kept alive. So think about that, those 4 things as building a house. And that's what we do in our proven process. So what is it? It's all about day 2 support. It could include system maintenance. It could include support personnel, system management, monitoring and change management, user meeting support. What does all those things mean? I'm going to go into a deeper dive. But just basically put, my systems are not working really well. If designed right, if we go through our proven process, we would have an element around that that would reduce some of that tension. But ours is all about eyes on the screen. I know, Brad, you like that one. It's eyes on the screen. So it could be a remote, and you'll see OnSite. It's all the way down at the end. We built a platform around software that proactively monitors, manages, and has analytics around any of the rooms that you have in your environment. And we are seeing more and more Fortune 500 organizations migrating themselves to that platform. It just gives us the eyes on the screen. Whether we're doing it or you're doing it, it really is the foundation. The average system lifespan is only 4 to 7 years. When you think about it, and we hear things like AV as a service out there today. I think we're going to get to the point in this industry where it will become more of that type of a model, a use space model, where maybe I'm only using the room for 8 hours a day and I only want to be charged for that. I don't think it's there yet right now as we're seeing this evolution of as a service. We could bundle that as a managed service, but more importantly, I think what this says on this slide is we need to be thinking about this life cycle of every 4 to 7 years. And that's real. And I hear customers all the time telling me, our rooms don't work, they break, I don't like this touch panel system. How are you going to give me the support to manage that? Well, let's take a look and back to pro development in the very first slide that I showed you. Let's have the conversation about what that room environment should be, or those collaboration spaces, and how should they work. It's supporting collaboration technologies across multiple platforms. It's a multiple different types of platforms. This morning, Gary talked about ecosystems. The biggest thing I'll talk about today as we get down the road here in a few of these slides is that it's interoperability. There are platforms and ecosystems at corporations today that aren't talking to each other, and it's extremely complicated. If you take a look at what's out there on YouTube today, or you take a look at what's going on in social media, you will hear customers continually complain about their environments. And we're having to deal with this other thing called Zoom. I heard it this morning. And they just went public 2 weeks ago. Eric came from Cisco, and I met Eric. And they just went public. Their stock went from $36 a share to $80 a share. And the reason why is because it just works. So our game on that one is, listen, I just want to attach my huddle room or my conference room to your platform. And if you have an interoperability problem to talk to Cisco or to talk to Polycom or anything else, let us help you there too, because our managed service or our professional development design can help you achieve that. So here are some industry trends. So the modern meeting this is what Wayne House says, it's virtual, visual, and anywhere. The video conferencing growth, 97% use video conferencing more than 2 years ago, and this came from Wayne House Research. They're one of the leading consultants in our industry. And then huddle rooms and open spaces. Huddle rooms will represent 67% of all video conferencing rooms by 2020, which is next year. And I've got a statistic on that. Mobile users growth, remote join and integration with web conferencing services, and critically important, that was Numerities, and the other one came from Frost & Sullivan. So in every deal, and we see with the largest corporations in the country, and I've talked to Apple Computer, I've been in front of LinkedIn, I've been in front of Microsoft, we've talked to Amazon, we've had conversations with Facebook. They have audiovisual spends like $40 million a year, $50 million a year, because that's Silicon Valley. They spend money on this because they are the inventors of what technology is today. 3/4 of the room, we see 67% here, are in these smaller spaces. It's becoming prevalent everywhere. We need to have day 2 support looking at those spaces every day. In fact, to the point where it should be really touchless, userless. We're getting to the point when I walk in, either I could do it with facial recognition, voice control, or one touch. And Gary talked about that this morning. The millennial wants, and he talked about having FaceTime, having 16 screens on FaceTime. That's what the millennials used to, right? The generation that is much down the road from me. I came from the boomer generation. You're still going to have that boomer element where the boomer is going to want some executive oversight and support from some level of a white glove, and that's managed services as well. And we provide that. whether it's on-site staffing or just remote monitoring or launching a video call for a C-suite executive. And that's kind of what the concierge part of what we'll call our fifth pillar, which I'll talk to. Trends driving change. 85% of knowledge workers work on virtual teams. 41% have never met in person. There's the rise of huddle. I talked about the 75-to-1 ratio. Now it's 10-to-1. In the future, it's going to be 5-to-1. The ratio of people needing to use in a meeting space. Think about it. Think about your own environment today, for those of you that are around meeting spaces all the time. What is the need to have a corporate boardroom, except for the corporate boardroom, which is about 25% of the business? You know, whether it be a lobby or whether it be a corporate boardroom or a training room or a large venue application or a town hall meeting, which also becomes another service that we can provide, is town hall meeting support. Well, now the millennial and the Gen Z workforce is saying, I want face-to-face, but I expect full flexibility. And full flexibility means I really need it easy. Our industry has created this very customized, audio-visual, touch panel, multi-layer, CEOs saying, get this out of my boardroom. Been there, done that. Every single time. It's the same questions from customers all the time. Yeah, maybe I'm not totally talking about managed services right now. I'm talking about what we're seeing in the industry. But most importantly, managed services can be that glue or that day two support so that you don't get the grief from the baby boomer, the C-floor. That's where we see the biggest need for that white glove support. Complex. Look at these. Look at how many partners are out there, vendors, manufacturers, suppliers, all based on cloud. We're seeing SIP-based video clients, H.264 and 323 clients that are starting just to go away, and those rooms are needing to be regenerated into a cloud-based platform. We need to have a managed service or a proactive monitoring element that's going to look at those devices all the time, check health and status, including whether it's on the network or whether it's on the device itself, to make sure that it's fully operable. But look, we've got Microsoft and Cisco. So between the two of those companies, they probably represent 75 to 80% of the ecosystem. And you'll even know in your own world, is it not mostly Outlook that you're utilizing for your own calendaring and capability in your organizations? Migrating from Skype for Business, which was only an acquisition, 6-7 years ago from Microsoft, from Skype, from Tony, what his last name was, to today, which now it's migrating to Teams, which becomes a much more fluid, full motion video, full two-way audio conferencing with a click of a button on a screen. Now, how can I move that to my conference room? And there's platforms out here today that we're showing. Any one of them. There should be an absolutely continual image of the device that you have on your laptop should be the same image that you have in that conference room. You should be able to just do this. Or not use anything at all. You could use your laptop. All of that's going to need some level of monitoring, which is our OnSite platform, to make sure that things are working. Things break. Monitors break. Is there CEC control between the HDMI connector and the monitor? And I don't need to get techie on you, but all those things need to happen, and that's what managed services provides in a multi-platform capability. Customers say that can't be done. I can't get Cisco to talk to Polycom, I get Polycom to talk to Zoom, and I can't Zoom to talk to Teams. It can be done if designed correctly. We have the capability to do that. We have a UC organization that does that, a practice team that does that. We have a day two support managed services model that supports that. So it's about listening to the user. What are the real problems you're hearing? Anything that's a problem is an opportunity. This doesn't work because of that. And managed services is always an attachment to the design, but it goes back to when I started the beginning on the proven process. If we understand in pro development what's really going on in the problem pain points of that client of yours, because you're listening to your users, and if you think about it, your users are of different genre. Not only the different genre from boomer all the way to millennial, but also the different decision makers and the personas of each of the, what we call the three stacks of personas. You've got facilities, you have IT, and then you have the business line leaders. And the business line leader, me, VP of Sales, AVI Systems, I want Zoom. Yet the IT person's saying, I have Teams in the stack. How are the two going to talk? That's what we provide for day one and day two support. And day zero, if we back it up, that goes back to developing the right system from the very beginning. If we plan it right on that 4 to 7 year schedule, then we can start to plan the budgeting and the life cycle so it just becomes continuous improvement all the time. This is the challenge we're seeing with information technology today. So this is all about 100% uptime and being proactive before a problem exists. So user experience is going to drive adoption, which, by the way, managed services also contains an element of what we call user adoption training. Even in your existing systems today, if you already have investment into your enterprise, we would be happy to come in and put a training schedule together, and obviously the fees associated with that, to teach all your organizations on how to utilize the technology appropriately to drive user adoption up. If adoption goes up, what's going to happen? The investment in the ROI continues to drive forward. A great story is a financial services company out of Des Moines. In the last 5 years, we've built 1,300 conference rooms in 60 cities and 6 countries. We've drove adoption up from 3,500 conferences a month to 35,000. And that's based on the pro development design and the day 2 support, whether it be on-site staffing, whether it be just 24/7 monitoring or 24/7 break-fix help desk, but our eyes are always on the screen, always on the screen. And so these are the types of services that we provide at AVI Systems. So the reality of supporting users. Again, I'll back up to Gary, as I saw Gary this morning. It's all about real time. He talked about his students at the University of North Carolina, how there's continual need for real time. And if you saw the imaging and all the screens that were up, we need to keep that real time up all the time. And remember I said 75% of the 100% of the AV spend is mostly in huddle rooms, and I think Frost and Sullivan said 67%. So it's very close to what we're seeing. The other specialty spaces are the ones that need a little more higher touch in managed services or day 2 support. The executive floor we talked about, the town hall meeting, the large venue display, the direct view LED that might be out in the lobby. How many times you walked into a lobby and seen a direct view LED out? Well, one of the panels doesn't work. That should be proactive on our part. If we design the right element around day 2 support or managed services, that monitoring should be happening all the time, pinging the network, getting health and status, and getting alerts on the screen back to our eyes saying we have a problem. And that should be done before there's an event. So that meeting planning around scheduling is well understood through the calendaring process. The monitoring happens, the alert goes up, we fix it before anybody even walks into the room. Now, again, on the high touch areas, we're hand-holding with on-site staffing because it's that important. So why? So today's deployments are more complex than they ever have been. We're simplifying the user experience on the front end from what the UX sees and the touch, but behind the screen or behind the wall is where all the action's happening, and that's why we have to develop a managed services platform for any one of our customers that provide that uptime of 100%. It augments the current IT support for the information technology organization. It provides user support model for any of your meetings. But again, town hall, all hands, investors calls, it accelerates the return on investment. Even this morning, and I was watching poor Gary up here, and I'll rewind on that. And this is, when you look at it, this is kind of a managed services. We've got Showcore supporting us on our rental and staging. And I've worked with John before in our national sales meeting, and I said, what happened this morning? Because he used his own remote. I said, John, let me use your remote. Right? It's mistake number one. You work with the pain point I experienced this morning watching poor Gary using his little Logitech, which I have one as well. But when you're this far, you've got to use somebody else's device. I went through this in my own right, feeling his pain, by the way. That's what a customer feels like in a non-managed environment. I've seen organizations, very large organizations, a huge manufacturing aircraft company up in Seattle, won't name names, okay? We don't want to go down that path right now, but when I asked them, and we were meeting with them on doing the dial-up, dial-down model of as a service, as a usage model, so what's your service plan today? We don't have one. Okay, you're like the largest airplane manufacturer in the world, so you don't have a service plan, so what happens when a projector goes down? Oh, we call John down the street. Oh, John, you mean the other building? Yeah. What happens there? Well, he calls some vendor locally, and I don't know, then it's down for a couple days, and then they come over and I guess they kind of replace it or they put a new bulb in or whatever. It should never be that way, especially an organization of that size. And again, I want to be disrespectful, great company, good customer, all those things. When I hear that from a Fortune 100 company, that they don't have a day 2 support plan. Globally, that's managed services. That's keeping that 100% uptime and where we come in for any organization. So what do? 5 pillars, very simply, and I'll get into deep dive. Customer care, which are service level agreements that are guaranteed uptime 24/7, 365 on a global basis as those customers that are required. Strategic on-site staffing, which is residential support, but that's in different flavors. How about if I just have somebody do, meet and greet support at a conference room, making sure the customer is taken care of, there's room sweeps going on every day, that the room is ready to go. I need an engineer on site. I need somebody to work with on a day-to-day basis that would understand my needs, that I can work back with the branch office, the corporate office, or the local office at AVI Systems to design systems as an augmentation to understand what the needs are. A break-fix technician, somebody that will be there when something breaks. Something will break. Oh, and by the way, if designed right, we have a crash kit ready to go. It's on site, it's on-prem, the XYZ whatever component, an audio video controller display went down, and we just pick it from the inventory, slide it in, and go out. That's what strategic on-site staffing is. It could be a video conferencing operator. It could be a corporate television manager. It could be a corporate television producer. It could be an editor. Any of those things augmented to what you have today in your organizations can be benefited through our strategic on-site staffing model. And then the centerpiece of our portfolio, which I mentioned before, which is our AVI Insight Proactive Monitoring. It's monitoring, workflow automation, and analytics. And if you get the time, go all the way down to the end. Dave Hatz is presenting it, and I'll talk about it right now, and I've got another slide as well. If you just put it in simplest of terms, eyes are on the screen, every device is monitored, health is in green, and all of a sudden up comes an alert. Okay, there is a Crestron DMPS 154K that is down in Chicago, Illinois, at Northwestern University. That's a real statement, by the way, because I saw it on our knock last week. It's truck rolling, it's being replaced by tomorrow. It's set it on the screen. They're one of our customers. So we're going to truck roll, we're going to go fix that tomorrow. Now, on a proactive element, right, that's before any meeting. So we saw that, so before the meeting happens at Northwestern tomorrow, or the class, we're already going to truck roll and get it fixed. That's what AVI Insight Monitoring is. Then we can look at the analytics of each of the rooms. The analytics say, did we use the room? How many people were in the room? And that'll help us in this life cycle management of every 4 to 7 years, because when we walk into that space, we'll understand and look at all of our metrics report, say, we're not using this room as much, let's move it over here where we need more rooms. So it's always an analysis of what the space is being utilized. And then Advocate Services starts what we call video operations assessment, and I'll go deeper into that. We need to assess the network and the systems themselves before we can provide any kind of a solution on what day 2 support would look like. And then finally, this is the high-touch meeting support. Conference production, high-profile meetings like town halls, and then cloud meeting services for a virtual meeting room. So now I'm going to give you an eye chart. And John, who wrote this, John Price, our Vice President of Managed Services, he's on vacation this week, so he said, Don, can you do this? I said, can you send me a mask? Do you have a John Price mask? Which he didn't. So anyway, he gave me the slide. He says, it's up to you. Do you want to go through this? And I said, I think our customers are smart enough to see some of the detail behind it to talk through it. So these are really the 5 elements. And when you look at the centerpiece of this, and that's why I put video operations assessment at the top, that professional service from us as a managed service will assess what you have today in a fee-based consultative arrangement to understand the assets that you had. When SC Johnson came to us in Racine, Wisconsin and said to me, Don, we want a 24/7 opportunity here to manage all of our deployments. We want to be able to manage every endpoint, and we want to be able to maintain those on a 24/7 basis. I said, what are your assets? Well, we don't know. So why don't we develop a program, that's their pain point, so I know every asset, every serial number in every room, when it went in service and when it should go out of service. That's an assessment. Because if you start with the assets that you already have, and that's not an easy task, you can always work back through the IT organization, and the administrative assistants can help us with that, but we can design the template on how to do that assessment. That video assessment is important of all the assets, and then what's the network look like? Then we get into network design. Is the network robust enough? What type of endpoints are we talking about? How many multiple locations? How many locations do we have? You start talking about 1,000 and 2,000 rooms, like we did at the financial services company in Des Moines. See, I can't use names here. So anyway, that's what we call video operations assessment. And then user adoption is all about the training level, and then systems management is pushing out licenses, updates to all your devices. So if we want to make sure that we are able to push content to all the devices that constantly get updates, think about your own personal computers in your own organizations. When an update comes from Microsoft, or even that gets pushed to our Apple iOS devices, that update's ready to go, you download it. That's a service we provide in our video operations around Advocate Services. So we can push those licenses out to all the codecs, to all the hard devices in all the rooms. I know I started in the center. I think the left-hand side kind of speaks for itself. AVI OnSite, what that technically does is a collector that goes on-prem that talks to all your devices that are in our API sequence. Then we come through the firewall with our screens watching it all the time. And then we give you a license on-prem to do the same thing. That's how we do a proactive monitoring ability to take a look at whether there's a problem or not in the room environment, and then from there we can get somebody truck rolled if need to. What's interesting, as we've designed this entire business model, is that the day two support around that shouldn't be as many truck rolls if A, designed right, and B, we have a managed services plan around it as well. Because we should have all those drawings, details, and all that in our help desk ready to go. And we have obviously other technologies we're working at. I saw something new last week on a QR code, where the QR code literally goes in the room. You use your phone, you hit the QR code, and then up comes the video operator. So I'm Don Mastro, AVI Systems. May I help you? Ms. CEO, XYZ Corporation? Really? Yeah, I'm right here. Well, how can I help you? Well, here's the problem I've got in the back of my rack. Takes the phone over. And I looked at it and I go, wow. I mean, that's where we're headed. And then we have all of the data onto that QR code. We've got every drawing of every room. We have if you want a video on how to operate the room, you want a hard cheat sheet on the room, any of that is part of our managed services portfolio in our design. And then I talked about our meeting support, conference production services around call scheduling, virtual meeting rooms, and cloud meeting services and recording. And all this on a baseline starts with our Advocate Services and our AVI OnSite. We need a video operations assessment, and we need to have some level of software support. This is how we elevate and escalate a ticket. And I think it's important for you to know that. This follows the IT service management, ITSM standard for day two support. This is the standard with information technology is looking at today. You have your own IT organizations when you're a large corporation or your large higher education. It's the same thing here with us. And it happens in your own audiovisual departments for some of you that have those deployments. We treat it the same way in our customer care 24/7, 365 desk. We take an escalation from a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So the tier 1 picks up the phone or an 800 number or an email or a text. We can resolve that situation through this flow. And we get the experts created from a ticketing system. We start with logging the incident. We go to ticket creation, then we have a category of whether it's high, medium, or low, then there's a priority, whether it's critical, and then there's an incident resolution, and we close the ticket. We try to close that ticket within a 48-hour sequence. If that's what customers are looking for, that's just simply our customer care, pro support, 24/7, 365, eyes on the screen, keeping things up and running. It's all about uptime, 100% uptime. So why us? And why AVI OnSite? Talked about a little bit earlier. The details. System monitoring, multi-vendor, it doesn't matter to us. Audiovisual UC assets, digital media assets, real-time, business process automation, all of the types of analytics that we're looking at on the space usage, and any kind of critical failures that we're seeing. We'll know a failure report every month. What is failing consistently? What is the problem with this room? Why are we using this room? Should this room be moved over here? Why do we even need this area? Nobody's using this area. That's called return on investment, as you take a look at how we're looking at OnSite. This is how we look at a hybrid model. A hybrid model would have on-site meeting support with staffing technicians. It would have remote capability for the CEO. It would have system support because we're sending licenses out all the time, device support because we're monitoring from OnSite, and then advocate services to make sure that we're delivering on the day-to-day requirements of training so that the users understand how to use the systems. That is all based on our platform, but more importantly, that's what a remote and a hybrid on-prem solution looks like in a managed services environment. So, this really becomes kind of the full meal of what a managed services deployment looks like from AVI Systems. And the video program assessment, it's customized, value-added, but most importantly, we're looking at all the technologies, we're looking at the network, we're doing the asset evaluation, so we come back with an empirical detailed report to explain exactly what our assessment was when we work back through your teams. So what does the process, the objectives, and the timeline look like? There's kind of an 8-week total that we look at it going through this assessment. And this, again, of the managed services portfolio we talked about, we're talking about purely user advocate services under video assessment. And I want to show you the level of detail. We go through a discovery phase. And by the way, you can apply this to any one of our managed services 5 pillars. But some are quicker stakes than others as far as timeline. We identify all the stakeholders. It's important that we're meeting with all those business line managers to understand what uses they're having, to get outcomes, to document in our report. That we're interviewing, that we're getting constantly relevant documentation, including all the inventory and documentation around all the processes. We're trying to understand, what does your workflow look like? What are your users using every day, and how are they walking into any one of their meetings? How they walk down the hall? I mean, think about this if I get off the detail for a minute. What a world we would live in if I walked into a huddle room and it just worked. I walk in, and the room says to me, "Good morning, Don Mastro. This is your meeting at 9 o'clock. Thank you. Here's your content presentation." Up it comes. Up comes everybody on the call. Now, this is what white glove looks like, right? And then you got somebody with a headset on monitoring that call for you. That's what white gloves. Self-perform says I walk in, it's no touch, it's one touch. It could be occupancy sensing, it could be voice control, could be facial recognition, or where we're headed, artificial intelligence. If I'm up here in 5 years having the same conversation with you about managed services, we will already been there, what I just said, because we're almost there right now. If you look at what's being developed in the world today, in all the technologies, whether it's in Silicon Valley or automation or what's going on in cars and automotive, why can't it happen in the audiovisual industry? 12 years ago, Cisco said, you know what? We're going to do it ourselves. We're going to develop something called telepresence. From 2007, they said, this industry is not solving the problems of our customers. And what happened was the C-suite at the Fortune 500s, and you know who I'm talking about. I'm going to buy that Cisco telepresence room, the CTS 3000. I'm going to spend $300,000 for that room and $18,000 a month for network because it works. Today, those rooms are being ripped out and being put in by systems that we design and develop, and day 2 support, because they had day 2 support on that, don't get me wrong. HP had a product as well called their Halo product. This is only 12 years ago. Last 5 years, we've seen this evolution of soft codecs, cloud-based conferencing, and the real need for a true ITSM model, or information technology services management, and day 2 managed services support. And that's what we provide today at AVI Systems. So I wanted to make sure I gave you as much information this morning as possible. Our project phases just continue on discovery, analysis, assessment, recommendations. And this is kind of my last slide, and I know I roll off a little bit, but I want to give you guys some time for some questions, and I hope I've answered a lot of questions that you might have had or pain points. So please. Pardon? Do you need agents on these devices you can monitor? Our collector. So if you go down and talk to Dave Hatz at OnSite, he'll talk about what our collector does. And we have security layer concerns too, right? Because we've got to go through a firewall. We have to have all the IT security approvals from IT. And we've gone through all that due diligence. So that collector talks through an API to any of the devices in the room.
Will this work with any big programs like BCM or ServiceNow, or integrate this?
Yes. Yeah, so sometimes what we'll do is we'll have our own monitoring platform. We'll put the service ticket system right next to it, right? So it could be ServiceNow, right?
Does the OnSite have something that does the computer side of it too?
It can. I think it's a conversation. That might be a customized conversation, like we talked about the customized. I think it's something we could talk to Dave about. Dave's on the floor. I think those questions, you should, because don't let me be an engineer, okay? That's the last thing you want. Doug knows that. Yeah, right. Good question. Please, any question?
Just speak a little bit about the hiring process. So putting people
On strategic on-site staffing?
on site, to what degree does the company have a stake in that or a hand in that interviewing process or any sort of input, or is it just that you're assigning person of the month or quarter?
At AVI Systems, we have 700 employees, 100% employee owned. We go through extreme vetting process of every employee we hire. And Joe Stabner, our chairman, and I'm going to use his term, and I love it. He says, there's 3 things we look for in an employee. We look for intelligence, hard work, and we look for integrity. If you don't have number 3, we're not interested. Integrity is more important, Doug. Competency is as well. Hard work and intelligence if they know what they're doing. But we go through a stringent, we do it for every element of the company. No different when we're hiring an engineer in one of our branches. We go through the same process when it comes to that one of those job descriptions that I talked about. It's the same stringent that we go through in our human resources organization. Yep. What else?
So what's the next big thing in meeting rooms to you that you're showing some of the technology?
Yeah, I talked to it, right? The big thing in meeting rooms to me is going to be facial recognition, where it's proximity, and I walk in, and what I said, because truly it happens today, we've actually demonstrated it before, it's kind of early right now, that I should be able to walk into that room and just say who I am or recognizes my face and everything works. It's got to be designed that way. Can we do it today? Of course we can, but it takes that entire process of working through all the details. What's the easy part is, and you see it in these huddle kits, let's call them what they are, right? You touch a button and the room works. Okay, it does. I mean, that's the easy way today. We're demonstrating that with Crestron today, with their Flex environment, Logitech, their TAP environment. Logitech has 3 touch panel emulations. They've got Google Hangouts, which is a new trend, by the way, especially in Silicon Valley. Teams, and then Teams, Google, and then what we're looking at with Skype. So we'll emulate, and Zoom. Zoom's the other. Those are kind of the 3 prevalent that we're seeing right now. We're seeing a Google UX, we're seeing a Teams UX, and we're seeing a Zoom UX. So what happens is the VP of sales says, I'm going Zoom, and then the VP of IT says, well, we're already on Teams, and then we got to be brought in to make sure we glue them together. And that can be done through a PEXIP platform. We have a Starly platform. We've got ways to design the behind the wall, but we still need that day 2 support. We still need that. But you're asking about trends of what we're seeing. What I just said is what we're seeing right now. We just came from Enterprise Connect in the spring, and it was all about Google. It was all about Zoom and all about Teams. And I don't want to take away from Cisco, because Cisco has their closed environment. They got a nice, obviously we're a large Cisco integrator, but they do everything in their own platform. It's very highly designed. It's very their touch 10 interface only. And then we have to design how we're going to utilize a third-party interface to talk to the other formats, because interoperability was what all that was about. But I gave you kind of what I'm seeing right now on room development. These huddle rooms have got to be, they just got to work that quickly. The audio's got to be good, and the 4K video has to be fantastic in both cases. Because if the audio is not good in that room environment, who cares about the video? If the audio's popping and not working, and believe me, we've been through some of this with these DSPs and these, the microphones in the ceiling, and, is it Teams certified with Microsoft? But, that's why we bought Maginium Solutions last February. They're helping us with our Microsoft relationship, so that whatever we're connecting to, whether it be Flex or whether it be any other device, is that we've got a way to talk in the Microsoft environment and the Cisco environment. Any other questions? Chuck Wilson, NSCA. By the way, just totally honored to have Chuck here, please.
Just a quick question, Doug. From the end user perspective, and
Right.
particularly the IT department, are you seeing acceptance or reluctance in regard to the cyber posture, cybersecurity, and all that, getting behind the firewall with the clients? Are they putting pressure on you guys to have a cybersecurity, plan in place and all that?
Our CTO, there he is back there again, Brad. Tony Stark, I call him. Brad just had a conversation last night with a huge healthcare architectural firm globally. That was all they talked about last night, was what's going on with cybersecurity in the audiovisual space and what kind of security environments do we need. And if we're doing it in the federal government, and we are, okay, with those platforms, we're doing it in the corporate arena. And Brad, you can come up here and share a microphone if you want. Yeah.
I'm wondering overall if we have to up our game here a little bit or start, showing more risk management,
Collaboration platform.
Yeah.
Watch this. You want to talk about customization?
You're fine. I'll stand next to you. I enjoy standing next to you.
This is my buddy. We always collaborate on stage together. We do.
So your question was around the use of UC and how UC can become potentially a place of compromise.
Are you as an integrator required by the IT department to have, any kind of cyber protection?
So more and more today, the requirement is to be able to do cybersecurity validation at a number of levels. One of those levels is just basic pen testing and looking at the devices and how easily they can be compromised, that kind of thing. There's another level of security that's really around how networks interoperate with each other. And so those kinds of discussions today, we find ourselves in the middle of those discussions, especially within the federal government, defining for them methodologies of not opening their networks but creating interoperability. So the challenge that we face around cybersecurity is we want the openness of collaboration and the closedness of our security policy. And so there's some very specific steps that we can go through together to help create a security plan that your CISO or Chief Information Security Officer is going to be comfortable with. And we do it at a number of different levels, including above top secret today. Thank you for giving me a chance to do that.
Of course. Other questions on anything? Managed services, we talked about hull rooms, day 2 support, any customization requirements, we talked about OnSite. Any other questions? Hey, I'm supposed to go to the last slide, aren't I? There we go, logo. Thank you so much, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you and enjoy the show. Thank you.